Have you ever noticed how some people seem to flourish even in difficult times? I want to tell you about David, a business owner who faced the greatest economic crisis of his generation. As competitors closed their doors and friends lost everything, David's small company remained stable. More surprisingly, he continued his practice of generous giving to community causes and those in need. When asked about his unusual resilience, David shared a surprising secret: "My grandfather taught me to live by the principles in Psalm 112. He said if I feared the Lord and delighted in His commandments, I would have an unshakable foundation." Intrigued, I asked what that really meant in practice. His answer? "It means I make decisions based on eternal values rather than temporary gains." What if the ancient wisdom in Psalm 112 could truly transform our modern lives? What if true prosperity isn't just about financial success but about developing character that stands firm in any circumstance? The answer, as we'll discover today, has been hiding in plain sight for nearly 3,000 years. Psalm 112 begins with these powerful words: "Blessed is the man who fears the Lord, who finds great delight in His commandments." This ancient Hebrew poem was likely written during the post-exilic period, around 537 to 500 BCE, after the Jewish people returned from Babylonian captivity. It belongs to a collection of Psalms, 111 to 118, known as the Hallel Psalms, characterized by their focus on praising God. What makes Psalm 112 particularly fascinating is its structure as an acrostic poem in Hebrew, with each line beginning with successive letters of the Hebrew alphabet. This device served both as a memory aid and as a symbol of completeness, indicating that the blessings described cover every aspect of life from Aleph to Tav, the first and last letters of the Hebrew alphabet. The Psalm's historical context is significant. The Jewish community was rebuilding their lives after decades of exile. Imagine returning to your homeland to find cities in ruins, fields untended, and social structures collapsed. The psalmist offers not just spiritual comfort but practical wisdom for rebuilding prosperous and just communities based on reverence for God. Let's examine what it means to fear the Lord. This phrase appears frequently throughout Scripture, but its meaning is often misunderstood. The Hebrew word for fear used here is yirah, which encompasses awe, reverence, and profound respect rather than terror or dread. It's recognizing God's greatness and responding with appropriate wonder and obedience. Rabbi Abraham Joshua Heschel, the influential 20th century theologian, described this concept as radical amazement, a state of mind in which we don't just believe in God's existence but stand in awe before the mystery and majesty of creation. This perspective transforms how we view ourselves and our place in the world. The psalm continues by describing the blessings that flow from this reverent lifestyle. His children will be mighty in the land, the generation of the upright will be blessed. Wealth and riches are in his house, and his righteousness endures forever. Notice that the blessings aren't just for the individual but extend to future generations. This reflects the Hebrew understanding of legacy, that our actions create ripples affecting those who come after us. A 2018 study from the University of Copenhagen found that families who maintain consistent ethical values across generations demonstrate significantly higher levels of well-being and resilience in facing challenges. The psalm mentioned wealth and riches, but we must understand these terms in their proper context. The Hebrew words used here, han, and osher, certainly include material prosperity but extend beyond financial assets to encompass sufficiency, security, and the capacity to be generous. This nuanced understanding challenges our modern consumerist definitions of wealth. Consider that in ancient Israel, wealth was primarily measured in terms of agricultural abundance, livestock, and family connections, resources that sustained communities rather than individual luxury. The righteous person's wealth was seen as a blessing that enabled them to fulfill their obligations to family, community, and those in need. The psalm continues, "Even in darkness light dawns for the upright, for those who are gracious and compassionate and righteous. This striking image acknowledges that the righteous person isn't immune to difficulty. Darkness, trials, suffering, uncertainty comes to everyone. But the psalm promises that light will dawn even in those dark seasons. Historical examples abound of individuals who demonstrated this resilience. During the Great Depression of the 1930s, when unemployment reached 25% in America, stories emerged of people who maintained their generosity despite their own hardships. One notable example was Milton S. Hershey, founder of the famous chocolate company, who launched a construction program specifically to provide jobs, building community structures that still stand today. The psalm emphasizes that the blessed person is gracious and compassionate and righteous. The Hebrew word for gracious here is chanun, referring to someone who shows favor without obligation. Compassionate translates racham, indicating tender mercy toward those suffering. And righteous is tzaddik, denoting someone who lives according to divine standards of justice. These qualities aren't presented as optional extras but as essential characteristics of the person who fears the Lord. They manifest in practical actions. As the next verse explains, good will come to those who are generous and lend freely, who conduct their affairs with justice. The emphasis on generosity and just dealings reveals that prosperity in the biblical view is inseparable from ethical conduct. In fact, the Jewish concept of tzedakah, often translated as charity but more accurately meaning righteous giving, was not considered optional but an obligation. The Talmud, compiled around 500 CE, elaborates that even those receiving charity should practice giving to others. Conducting affairs with justice speaks to business and economic practices. The Hebrew word, mishpat, encompasses fair treatment, equitable systems, and advocacy for the vulnerable. This challenges us to consider how we earn, invest, and spend our resources. Do our financial decisions contribute to just systems or perpetuate inequity? The psalm then offers a remarkable promise: surely the righteous will never be shaken, they will be remembered forever. This doesn't mean the righteous person won't face challenges but that their foundation remains secure. The image is architectural: a well-built structure may weather storms but remains standing because of its solid foundation. This stability extends beyond the individual's lifetime, they will be remembered forever. In Hebrew thought, being remembered wasn't just about name recognition but about leaving a legacy of righteousness that continues to influence future generations. Archaeological discoveries throughout Israel bear witness to this value, with inscriptions honoring individuals not for wealth or power but for acts of justice and kindness. They will have no fear of bad news, their hearts are steadfast, trusting in the Lord. This confident trust doesn't stem from ignorance of potential difficulties but from conviction about God's character and promises. The righteous person acknowledges that challenging circumstances may come but maintains inner stability regardless. Psychological research supports this view. A 2021 study published in the Journal of Personality found that individuals with strong religious commitments demonstrated greater emotional regulation during crisis events, maintaining lower stress levels and more consistent decision-making abilities. Their hearts are steadfast, established, they will have no fear, in the end they will look in triumph on their foes. The Hebrew word, samak, translated as steadfast, carries connotations of being supported or upheld. It's not self-generated confidence but support received from a divine source. The reference to looking in triumph on their foes requires careful interpretation. This isn't celebrating revenge but acknowledging that ultimately, justice prevails. Those who oppose righteousness and justice, whether individuals or systemic evils, will not have the final word. They have freely scattered their gifts to the poor, their righteousness endures forever, their horn will be lifted high in honor. The imagery of scattering gifts suggests generosity without careful calculation, giving freely rather than grudgingly. This contrasts with the modern tendency to optimize charitable giving for maximum tax benefits or recognition. The horn lifted high, is an ancient Near Eastern metaphor for dignity and strength. In Hebrew culture, the horn symbolized power, and its elevation represented public vindication. This suggests that generosity doesn't diminish one's standing but paradoxically enhances it, a principle Jesus later articulated when he taught that, "Whoever loses their life for my sake will find it." The psalm concludes with a striking contrast: "The wicked will see and be vexed, they will gnash their teeth and waste away, the longings of the wicked will come to nothing." This final verse isn't about gloating over others' misfortune but recognizing that paths opposed to God's righteousness ultimately lead to frustration and emptiness. Throughout history, we've witnessed the collapse of systems built on exploitation and injustice. The Roman Empire, despite its wealth and military might, eventually crumbled partly due to extreme inequality and moral corruption. More recently, the 2008 financial crisis revealed the unsustainability of economic systems built on deception and greed. What practical lessons can we draw from Psalm 112 for our lives today? First, we're invited to reconsider our definition of blessing. The psalm presents a holistic view that includes material provision but emphasizes character, family legacy, community impact, and ethical integrity. This challenges the reductionist equation of blessing with financial prosperity alone. Second, the psalm highlights the interconnection between spiritual reverence and practical ethics. Fear of the Lord isn't abstract spirituality but manifests in concrete actions: generosity, fair dealings, compassion for those in need. This challenges artificial divides between religious and secular aspects of life. Third, Psalm 112 offers a framework for building resilience. By grounding our identity and security in enduring values rather than changing circumstances, we develop the capacity to weather difficulties without being fundamentally shaken. This doesn't eliminate hardship but provides resources for navigating it. Fourth, the psalm presents generosity not as an occasional gesture but as a lifestyle. The righteous person freely scatters gifts to the poor, making generosity a habitual practice rather than a rare exception. Modern research confirms the benefits of this approach. A 2017 study from the University of Zurich found that even small acts of generosity increase happiness and life satisfaction. Fifth, we see that righteousness creates ripple effects beyond the individual. The blessings described extend to children and future generations. This invites us to consider the legacy we're building, not just financial inheritance but the values, relationships, and community contributions that outlast us. The wisdom of Psalm 112 has found expression in diverse cultural contexts. In 19th century England, William Wilberforce, motivated by his reverence for God, led the movement to abolish the slave trade despite fierce opposition. His persistence in pursuing justice exemplified the steadfast heart described in the psalm. In 20th century India, Mother Teresa's work among the poorest of the poor demonstrated the compassionate generosity the psalm celebrates. Though facing tremendous challenges and periods of personal spiritual darkness, her commitment to serving others remained unshaken. More recently, organizations like Habitat for Humanity have embodied the Psalm's principles by addressing housing insecurity through community partnership rather than mere charity. Founded in 1976 by Millard and Linda Fuller, the organization has helped more than 35 million people achieve strength, stability, and self-reliance through shelter. These examples illustrate that Psalm 112's wisdom transcends cultural and historical boundaries. Its principles have proven remarkably adaptable to diverse contexts while maintaining their essential character. Let's address some common misunderstandings about this psalm. Some have interpreted verses about prosperity as guarantees of material wealth for the faithful, what's often called a prosperity gospel. However, this reading fails to account for the psalm's broader definition of blessing and ignores its acknowledgement that the righteous will face darkness and opposition. Others might view the psalm's ethical demands as a form of works righteousness, earning God's favor through good deeds. Yet the psalm begins with reverence for God as the foundation, suggesting that ethical behavior flows from relationship with God rather than attempting to earn divine approval. Some readers might be troubled by the apparent dualism between the righteous and wicked, seeing it as overly simplistic. However, the psalm doesn't deny moral complexity but highlights the ultimate trajectories of different life orientations. It's less about categorizing individuals and more about clarifying the consequences of different value systems. The psalm's enduring power lies in its unified vision of spiritual devotion and practical ethics. It rejects compartmentalization, showing how reverence for God transforms every aspect of life, from family relationships to business practices to community engagement. For the ancient Israelites rebuilding their society after exile, this message provided not just comfort but practical guidance. It reminded them that prosperity comes not through adopting the exploitative practices of surrounding empires but through creating communities characterized by justice, generosity, and compassion. In our own era of economic uncertainty, social division, and environmental crisis, Psalm 112 offers similar wisdom. It suggests that true security comes not from accumulating wealth at others' expense but from developing character that enables resilience and generosity regardless of circumstances. The psalm invites us to consider, what would our communities look like if we measured success not by individual acquisition but by collective flourishing? How might our economic systems change if we prioritized justice and compassion alongside efficiency and growth? What legacies might we build if we extended our concern beyond immediate gratification to future generations? As we close our exploration of Psalm 112, I'm reminded of the businessman I mentioned at the beginning. His grandfather was right. This ancient wisdom does provide an unshakable foundation, not just for individual prosperity but for creating communities where justice and compassion flourish. The invitation stands for each of us, to pursue a reverence for God that transforms how we live, work, give, and build. In a world obsessed with temporary gains, we can choose the enduring path of righteousness, not from fear of punishment but from love of what is good and true. May we become people whose light dawns even in darkness, whose hearts remain steadfast in uncertainty, whose generosity flows freely to those in need. For in this way, we not only find blessing ourselves but become a blessing to others, creating ripples of righteousness that extend far beyond our lifetimes. The wisdom of Psalm 112 has endured for nearly 3 millennia because it speaks to our deepest human longings for meaning, security, and impact. Will we have the courage to embrace its countercultural vision? The answer to that question will shape not just our individual lives but the world we leave to those who come after us. Before you go, I want to personally invite you to be part of our growing community here at Prayer Universe. If this video touched your heart or brought you peace, take a moment to hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications so you never miss a prayer or message that can uplift your spirit. But most importantly, I'd love to hear from you. In the comments below, share just one word or phrase of motivation that this video inspired in you, whether it's hope, gratitude, peace, or something else. Your words matter deeply to us because they help guide the content we create for this channel. Together, let's build a space filled with faith, encouragement, and connection. Thank you for being here, and remember, every prayer counts. See you in the next one.